To keep workers content and productive, how can businesses best take advantage of the digital transformation of the workplace? And what is the future of work? Our guest today will tell us more about these issues. Kun Han Chon, Managing Director of Nutanix ASEAN, he based in Singapore, and Kun Thawipong Anotaisinthawee, Country Managers of Nutanix Thailand. สวัสดีครับทั้งสองท่านค
สวัส
รั
ดี
บ
ครับ
Welcome to Voice of the Nation, and this is the topic that I've been, curious to talk about. There's so many questions about what business should do to treat their employees, their well-being, and other stuff. And I believe you have the latest information to tell us about this. But before we go to that, I'd like to understand more about the overview of the workplace after the COVID in ASEAN countries. Also, Kun Han, can you tell me more about that?
Kun Vitaya, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us today. We are really excited to talk about future of the workplace. I represent an organization called Nutanix. It's a company that was born somewhat 13 years ago, and we focused on growing what we call the hyperconverged, and now we are moving to focus on modernizing our work environments through hybrid multi-cloud solutions. So we quite often come across customers and partners who are in their journey towards making their workplace ready for the future. And we have been sort of on that journey for quite some time, but obviously through the COVID situation, that has thrown a lot of the organization into a frenzy of trying to get into that end goal sooner rather than later. And around ASEAN, when the pandemic started, that sort of, urgency kicked off everywhere. And, here in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and of course in Thailand, every organization who had to figure out a way to make the workforce still productive, but without actually having the people getting together was a huge challenge, because a lot of the situations, the organizations were caught off guard and they didn't really have an idea of how to sort of get that going. Now that we've been into that pandemic for about 2.5 years later, we have all learned a lot more since then. So we do know now that the way that the organizations have to provide this work environment, it wasn't simply just about providing technology, but it was about giving the users the choice. Because even during the pandemic, we realized that some jobs and some responsibilities had to be taken care of in person, whereas some other responsibilities could be taken care of remotely. So we had to figure out quickly how to make sure that those who had to be on premise and those who can actually work remotely work together in a cohesive environment. And a lot of technologies were deployed to be able to make that happen. And now that COVID is now somewhat in the back mirror, organizations are now trying to define what it means to have the workplace of the future implemented in the environment. And we do see different levels of adoption of technology and practice right across the region. And but one thing that I do realize is that it is not about technology. Yes, we are part of the solution that enables that workplace of the future. But really, workplace of the future, to me, feels like the organizations having the ability for the employees and the workers to have that choice of being able to either work remotely or choose to work on premise. Depend on what you see as more productive and efficient way of working, and organizations being able to do that seems to be the core of what future of workplace seems to be. And technology is there to enable it. And we are seeing a lot of sort of reconsideration for what they have done for the last 2.5 years. And they're now in the journey to be able to make it work for those who choose to work still from home, as well as those who wants to or needs to work on premise, and make sure that the entire working environment becomes extremely cohesive is a big challenge.
I see. Before the COVID, I'm not sure that did businesses talk about well-being And I know that the welfare of the staff are important, but when with the COVID now, well-being is part of the consideration when you design the workplace, not on the on the for the HR job only, but the way they work, the mental health. They are remotely working and they are separate from their workers, and so you think that the well-being is just becoming the key issues, or they've been around for quite some time for this day?
I,
Could John help?
I believe the issue of workers' well-being has been around for a long time. I was actually revisiting a book that came out in 1995 called Workplace by Design, written by a gentleman named Franklin Becker. And it was about how to create workspace that supports business strategies. It was more about the physical space at the time. It was about how to lay out your work environment so that it is allowing the workforce to really work in a cohesive fashion. Now, despite the fact that the book was written some time ago and it was written under a very different environment, it still had a consideration for well-being of its workers, not just from the health and other practical perspective, but their mental well-being. You wanted the employees to feel comfortable. They wanted the work environment to encourage the people to be able to work at their best. And how do you sort of create that environment was a key conversation of the book. And if you take a look at, I think, what we are facing today, we are, despite the fact that we are in the different environment, I think we are talking about exactly the same thing. So people are trying to figure out how to encourage, support, and make sure that the teams are able to work in a cohesive fashion, whether they're working from home because they either feel more comfortable doing so or they have the need to do so, versus those who are working on premise, who may feel more effective at doing their job by doing it on premise versus at home, and make sure that those are actually able to work together in a cohesive fashion, and make sure that nobody feels uncomfortable. Nobody feels like that they are losing out because either they chose to work on premise or they chose to work from home. I think that's what we are still talking about today. So going back to the idea of the employee well-being, absolutely. By giving them the choice and the capabilities to be able to work wherever and whenever they choose to work, I think we can create an environment that is much healthier for the people to work at, and giving them a lot more choice beyond what was available previously.
Okay, how do you think how many people? Let me ask this: giving people choices. Some company not giving people choices. It's just like demand and set out the regulation. This is one choice that, like some companies said, oh, we do not support work from home policy. So it's not giving people choices. So, but in nowadays, like companies in Singapore, most of them, can you tell that more than like 50%, they are giving people choices, no matter the industries. Like people just think that high-tech companies or startup companies working with technologies we have more advanced idea, and then let reflect on their policy for the employees, so they can give people choices because they have facility, they are in the high-tech in technology, so they are more ready. But those traditional businesses, they may not be able to provide resources enough for giving employee choices. So what you advise about this?
Right. And when I think about it, I don't think that any organization that has a strong future aspiration for growth and for their expansion is completely ignoring the fact that the work environment can be either from home or on premise. I don't think anybody's doing that. Everybody's thinking about it. Everybody's trying to figure out what it is. Some are taking longer than others to figure it out, because the reality is that some of their requirements may simply require people to be on site. For example, the logistics companies, you do need physical people to move the boxes and to make the delivery happen. So simply going in and highlighting that everybody can work from home may not be an ideal situation. So, and you want those who are having to work in a specific environment not feel like that they are losing out, not losing out to those who either work from home or work from on-premise, because those who work on-premise, you have a camaraderie. You go to lunch together, you have a coffee together, you have tea together, and you build a relationship with your coworkers, which is an important part of creating a very positive workspace. So I think a lot of organizations are trying to figure it out. I don't think that there's any organization that's out there who's thinking, I'm only going to do this and nothing else. I think everybody's taking a look at it and trying to figure it out. And quite often, where we get involved is basically customers trying to figure it out from a technology standpoint, because one of the key enablers of such working environment or flexible working environment is the technology component. Do you have an infrastructure ready to be able to provide a solution? Do you have capabilities and technology solutions that allows the user to work from home or remotely seamlessly with those who are working in the office? I think that's what's going on. And I know that there's a lot of conversation and discussions about what's the right mix of such environment. But again, I think everybody's looking into it. I don't think anybody's not looking at that option and saying, I'm just not there yet. Now, you did mention that you do see some of the more technologically inclined organizations to go there. I think those organizations do have a tendency to move a little bit faster because, one, some of the work that is often managed by the technology companies can be actually performed either remotely or on site. But secondly, a lot of the organizations who are at the obviously technology forefront has a genuine and deep understanding of how technology infrastructure needs to be provided in order to be able to make people work from home or on-premise seamlessly. So I think that's the advantage some of these tech organizations have. But again, whether you are a 100-year-old organization who has been traditionally doing work in a one certain way or not, I think everybody's taking a definitely look at what is the right way. And organizations are trying to figure out, how do we make this happen? Because you don't want to be falling behind because your competitor or somebody else may provide a work environment that is more suitable for today's thinking of what the workplace needs to be. So I think it is a competitive disadvantage if you were to simply ignore that and then try to pursue one particular path over the other. Having that flexibility, allowing the user space to be able to work wherever they want through technologies and other means, I think it's an important aspect of it.
Right, thank you. How about situation in Thailand ครับคุณทวิพงศ์ครับ Can you tell me what's going on now?
Yeah. If we refer back to the early of the COVID, we can divide the company into groups. The first group is the company who already experienced about the working remotely. Back to 10 or 20 years ago, the enterprise organization, they always think about the business continuity. It means that anything that impacted to their business, disrupt their business, right? Then how they can make sure that they can continue to run the business. If we remember about the flooding situation in Bangkok, if we can call back about the political situation that may impact some organization, that organization learning how they can continue to keep their business running and keep the productivity up and run, right? So they implement some using some technology to implement, and then when they hit the COVID-19, they're ready to let their people working in different location, like they can work from home, they can work from in the disaster recovery location. But the second group is the company who not realize that we will facing this kind of the situation. So in this group, actually divide into two company. One is the traditional organization. They're not expert on the technology, and another group is they quite well on the technology. So the group that quite well on the technology, they can adapt the technology in the market to support their employee, their user to work remotely. Yeah, but the traditional, the legacy, the organization, they take quite a while to adapt and use the technology to help their organization. But we can say that fortunately, in the positive way, the COVID-19 take longer than what we expected, right? We are all facing is like up 2 and almost 3 years right now. So the people now quite familiar the way that they how they can work remotely, and it's proof in Thailand. It's proof that the working remotely like this is not impact to the productivity at all. Yeah, even some organization, they can get even more the productive than they going to work in the office, right? So they can not in the traffic, stuck in the traffic Bangkok in the morning. Yeah, so the people can get more time. Yeah, but then I think some organization, they quite advanced when they look, they can feel and see some benefit of the working from home, like they can reduce the cost of the facility. Okay, they can some
the rent of the
employee,
space.
they yes, come. And then some people, they feedback to the human resource, to the manager, right? They're quite happy when they work from home. They have more time, yeah, to work. They also have more time back to close with their family, yeah.
Right.
And then yeah, some organization in Thailand, so they think about this in advance. So they not just they try to study in their organization how they get the feedback from the each group of the people, each group of the department, and then develop the long-term working from home policy. Yeah.
Right. That triggers me to think about many companies may not really survey or take time to understand the employees' working requirements or environment. So we jam pack many before COVID. Many offices have crowded. They are crowded with a limited space, and now with the COVID, so some of them work from home and some of them work at the office, the premise. But they don't really understand this, that after they work from home, like Kun Thawipong said before, they may produce, they have more productivity is going up, but some companies still have the question that this is really productivity going up, maybe because they don't have something to measure the productivity, so they cannot tell that, okay, working at home, you can, in some parts, you can help bring up the productivity, and that leads to some employees and my friends as well talking about, oh, working from home is too tired than working in the office, because we've been dealing with the talking and meeting like this all the time, like three or four times online meeting, and it's getting tired, my eyes just like swollen, So for you as the expert on this, what your recommendation for your customers, that if you're not sure about that, if you let like 30% of your employees work at home, how you measure the efficiency, or you just let it go by some company in Thailand still using KPI, So I think it doesn't work in this case. But any tools or any suggestion ครับคุณฮานครับ that you can help the management think about, it's okay to let them work after the COVID at home, the productivity will not be affected.
Right. So just about every organization has their own view about how a productivity should be measured, whether it's actually generation of revenue or delivery or profit. But every organization has some way of actually measuring that, and you use it against the number of hours that are spent or number of employees that are there. But usually those KPIs do exist. But I do think that it's actually a fairly difficult one to measure, because I've been able to speak to people who believe that they gain tremendous amount of productivity by working from home, because they are not having to travel. They're having to be able to take care of some of the things that are of their personal nature, and then they can do that easily while working from home or remotely. But still participating and working with those that you need to, because you are doing a lot of the Zoom call, just like we are. And being extremely flexible, not only within the markets that you serve, but sometimes with your colleagues from different regions, like for those who work in US and Europe and so forth. And then you sometimes have the others who says, I rather work with a person closely. I think that way, having that person talking to me and then me being in front of that person, that's the way that I become really productive. So I think every person measures their productivity or efficiency in a slightly different way. So I think the company needs to be very careful that you're not actually forcing your productivity in one way or the other. But again, just going back to that sort of that employee choice or the work experience choice is going to be a critical component of it. And if I think about it, I think there are three major things that has to sort of come together in order to be able to make this right. The first one is the technology readiness. So you have to make sure that your infrastructure, your computational environment is ready to be able to provide the services that your users need. And we talk about things like abstraction of your resources through virtualization, and we talk about acronyms like VDI or virtual desktop infrastructure or DTaaS, which basically means a desktop as a service. So these kind of acronyms do come up, but technologically you have to be ready. You have to make the decision, and you have to enable it. And again, it's not just about the future workplace as a result of COVID, but globalization has already forced us to be able to work from anywhere at any time. So I think it's just an extension of what you already been doing a little bit faster. The second is obviously around process readiness. So you may need to figure out a way to make sure that people are able to review, approve, align, and debate on some of the business issues that you're talking about. How do you get a signature digitally? How do you get approval from this person to that person as your business moves forward? I think that's a critical component of a lot of organizations' capabilities that they have to gain in order to be able to make the hybrid workplace really work. Finally, I think, which is probably the more complex one that in my mind is a cultural readiness. So you need to create an environment where the organization is not favoring one or the other. You're not forcing the workforce to work from home only or work from office only, but you have to be able to create an environment, whether you choose to work on premise or remotely, you got to be able to create an environment that is fair for both, that none of them is working harder than the other by design. Everybody has ability to be able to do fair work and be able to contribute fairly and not favoring. And I think you need to be authentic as a company in terms of the changes that you're trying to make. So
that's the tough one. That's the tough one. To be
Yes.
authentic.
Yeah, because I mean, rightly so. As a business leaders, we are always trying to figure out a way to make us more competitive. And that could mean that we have a competitive edge against our competition through better profitability, through lower cost, or whatever it is. But you got to be authentic in the way that you're providing such environment. Otherwise, it'll come across very obvious to the people who are working for you, and realize that it may not be to their benefit, but simply to achieve a company objective. And
Right.
I think we have learned, especially over the last year or so, that the workforce also has a choice. We call it the great resignation, the big quit. It comes in many different forms, but the COVID situation has taught all the business leaders that you gotta be considering what your workforce wants and be able to provide the environment that is right for them. I think it's going to be critical. So technology readiness, process readiness, and cultural readiness. I think it's going to be a critical components of how to make this really work, both for benefits of the organization, because a happy workforce is a better organization. So, but also for obviously the workforce itself as well.
Right. So you mentioned cultural readiness. I think about some certain kinds of Thai habits ครับคุณทวิพงศ์ครับ some people said that working remotely will affect the teamwork because Thai people love to get together, we hang out together, we have that kind of behavior. Do you think this really one of the reasons to explain to your customer that okay, it doesn't in that way anymore? People can work remotely, can get united or making a teamwork as well. Or what kind of recommendation to your customer here in Thailand?
Yeah, I think the trend about the workspace and the workplace right now is we call the hybrid workplace. It means that we not the hybrid workplace. It's not the we work 100% remotely, but it's a mix of the on-site and the remote working. And I think it's really important for the organization. It's a responsibility for the organization to prepare the organization for the new working environment. I mean the hybrid working environment. Why? Because we not just look on the current employee or the current user, but when in the future company have to draw the attention from the talent people. The talent people is a young generation. It's not a kind like me or myself, right? It's the people who maybe just graduated, and then they find the place that they want, the organization that they want to join and working, right? So the young generation, the next generation, they will evaluate the company also, right? Which company that they want to work with. So I think the flexible working or the workspace is one of the thing that they're also looking for.
One of the factors, maybe quite priorities for the factors to look for a job, or somebody want to switch job, like Kun Han mentioned before, that if I apply for a new job, one of the very first question about that company is that is it possible for me to work at home or work anywhere? Because now the trend is just like that. If the company said that, oh no, we everyone has to show up at the workplace, so it's quite difficult to make decision that oh, I like to join this company. How about how do you help your customer, Nutanix facilities and products and services mentally to help the business leader to rethink about, especially those traditional businesses, they need maybe they need a new mindset, or they need some examples that they can use new tools or technologies to help them make sure that when they let their staff work anywhere, they can do something to make sure that this is working well. So can you give me some examples of your products and the facility or services of Kun Han?
Right. So from our perspective, the COVID situation really sort of accelerated all of these thinkings. And the first thing that a lot of the organization thought about is that how do I make it happen? You know, they haven't really thought about the cultural aspect. They haven't really thought about process, but you know, I just need technology to be able to make it happen. And we've been doing that very busily over the last 2.5 years, and we have our own solutions that actually provides the remote working environment enablement through our technologies. We also partner with some of the industry leaders like Citrix in order to be able to provide the virtual working environment for a lot of customers as well. So there's more than one way to sort of achieve the technology component. And we try to make sure that we are taking care of all aspects of it, that there's a specialized service that takes care of the virtual working environment or virtual desktop, but we also take care of the back-end infrastructure to be able to handle, manage, monitor, and grow that environment. And a lot of organizations had to sort of get that going in a hurry. And we've been able to actually make it seamless for a lot of the customers, because our company real focus has been on simplifying the management of the infrastructure. So we made a lot of the adoption much faster than a lot of customers thought that it was possible. But after we have done all of the technology work, and now we are seeing customers really think about the second and the third considerations. So which are the processes changes that they have to make, and cultural changes that they have to make. And I'm finding that those are much more complex questions than simply technology. In comparison, I believe the technology readiness can be achieved fairly straightforwardly. There are organizations like us, and there are competitors of us as well who provide solutions. But I think there are enough choices and capabilities now out there for customers to really take a look at and make a choice, an informed choice, by talking to vendors like us closely. And we believe that we have one of the better solutions out there, and customers have been responding to our sort of capabilities. But it also affords them the time to be able to look at the complex aspects. Now, how do I change the business process so that it can actually work? How do I change the culturally so that nobody feels like they're being victimized or they're being ostracized for either doing one or the other? Some organizations may feel like, hey, if you don't work on premise, then you're not a hard worker. That's not uncommon statement that I do hear from customers from time to time, that some employees do feel pressured to work in one mode or the other. And I think those are the difficult components that I think as business leaders we need to work on. Culturally, that we are ready, and from a process perspective, that we are ready. In our example, we've done a major internal survey to be able to see what our employee preferences were, and we have considered a lot of different sort of processes and ideas to be able to actually make the hybrid workplace work. So, and I'm very proud of the work that our organization has done to be able to provide the capabilities. But even prior to the COVID, I think there's the technical capabilities within our organization has always been available, which is something that I'm very proud of. So I think we are here to help the customers to simplify one of those three issues: the technical readiness. We're ready, either by ourselves, through our own solutions, or we can actually work with other technology partners to be able to make it work. And what we do in turn is not only do we solve the technological aspect of it, but it would give customers and partners time to think about the other two, which is much more complex. Culturally, are you ready? And are your business processes ready to be able to take advantage of the technical capabilities? And I think that's going to be a longer debate. And I think it'll be a continuing sort of discussion as we move forward. But what I can tell you is that every customer that I meet, whether they believe in hybrid work environment or future of workplace, or whether they actually insist that everybody simply work on premise, I can assure you that everybody is taking a look at it. They are looking at what are the options. How can we make it happen? Is it going to be good or bad impact for us? I think everybody's considering it because COVID just made sure that everybody was in the same boat, that you didn't have a choice. So I think everybody wants to make sure that they're definitely ready for the next sort of wave of such situations, as well as the changing workplace, I guess, attitude.
Yeah, right. We got so many discoveries and learning from the COVID situation. In Thailand, ครับคุณทวีพงศ์ครับ what most customers when they come to you, what they're looking for the most? They're looking for just advice, or they just come and I understand now. I need your help technically and help plan a new workplace for us. What did you find?
Actually, it's they come to the Nutanix and request for both things. One is the advice, and another one is about the technology. In example, the company who came to us during the COVID-19, they asked for some technology that will help them to enable the people for the work from home or the work remotely. But then when we try to understand their situation and understand their environment, so we realize that in some the COVID-19 will affect is just some people in that organization, right? It's not every organization. They need the technology to support their work from home. Some user or some employee, they can work from home without any, the technology. But
Right.
in some employee, they need to have. So then we can let them enable that people to work remotely with the technology. In example, the company the management, they want to they cannot enter to the office when the country locked down. So but however, they have to access to their critical system to do the approval. So they cannot do it without the technology to enable them to work remotely with the security, with the confidence when work from outside the company. So the Nutanix technology at that time, we proposed them the desktop as a service technology that let their management to access to the company application, to the company data, and do the approval with security.
I see. So that's
Right.
all what Nutanix offers for the customers, and also you help them understand more the situation. I love to talk more about this in the future when you have more services or facilities to tell more about the Nutanix. And if you like to further, if you like to find more information about Nutanix, you can go to nutanixthailand.com. and this wrap up the Voice of the Nation today. Thanks for joining us ครับทั้งสองท่านครับขอบคุณมากครับ
ครับขอบคุณครับ
and thanks for attending this session with us. And if you want more information about news about Thailand and what's going on in this country, please go to nationthailand.com. This is Voice of the Nation, and I'm Vitaya Saeng-Aroon. สวัสดีครับ